Hey everyone, Mr. Schleicher here with another video lesson. Today might be a little bit of review. I think maybe you all learned about this in middle school already, or biology, but we're going to talk about solutions and then the basic types of solutions today. So our learning objectives are we want to be able to define what a solution is, we want to describe the parts of a solution, and then we want to name those three main types of solutions. So first of all, what is a solution? The chemistry definition, probably a more broad definition than you're used to. A solution is a homogeneous mixture of a fluid. So what does that mean? Homogeneous just means like really evenly mixed. Like if you pick any part of that mixture, then it'll be identical to any other part. And then the fluid just means that it's going to be a liquid or a gas. So some examples of solutions you might have already heard of are things like salt water, sugar water, things like that. But something else you might not be as familiar with are things like atmospheric air. That is also a solution. So we have like oxygen, carbon dioxide, nitrogen gas, all evenly mixed up in the air that we breathe. Now, some examples of non-solutions are things like orange juice. Now, if you ever go to a supermarket, you see some orange juice that has sat there for a day or two. A lot of those orange pulp parts will fall to the bottom over time. That actually means that it is not a solution because it doesn't stay mixed in a very even, homogeneous way. Any sort of solid mixtures, like a mixture of sand or clay or powder, things like that, are usually not evenly mixed or homogeneous. So they are examples of non-solutions as well. Now, what are the main parts of solution here? So you might have heard of solute and solvent already. Now, the more broad term for this is the chemical that makes up most of the solution is called the solvent, and the chemicals that don't make up most of the solution are called the solute. So a really basic example here is when you dissolve sugar in some water, sugar is called the solute because it makes up less of the solution, and water is called the solvent because it makes up more of the solution. So you combine these things together and you form that solution and you have those two parts. Another example, let's say we go back to the atmospheric gas. Um, if oxygen makes up like 20% of the atmosphere, and then maybe nitrogen gas makes up like 80% of the atmosphere, which one is going to be the solute and which one is going to be the solvent? Well, oxygen makes up less, so it's the solute, and nitrogen makes up more, so it's the solvent. You can think about it like that. Now, what are the types of solutions? So there's three main types here, and these mostly pertain to when solutions have a solvent as water. So we have some water, and there's a certain phenomena here. Only a certain amount of solid solute can be dissolved in any portion of water. And I'm sure you've seen this before, like if you've been in a kitchen or you've been to like a restaurant or something and you're trying to dissolve some solute and maybe some water, for instance. So unsaturated solution means you can dissolve some solid in the water and you didn't add that much, like maybe you added a little bit of salt to some water, a little bit of sugar to some water, but you're able to dissolve more. You didn't actually dissolve that much in it, and all of it completely disappears. Saturated solutions are when you dissolve as much solid as you could in the water and you can't dissolve any more. And often you will have some solid building up at the bottom of the container. Like that shows you that you added too much solid, and you can't dissolve any more into it. Now, supersaturated solutions are when you dissolve more solid in the water than should be possible at a given temperature. So maybe something that they'll do is make sweet tea with a supersaturated amount of sugar. And we'll talk about that on the next slide. So using sweet tea as an example, sweet tea often requires a lot of sugar, more sugar that can be dissolved in ice water normally. I mean, like how good is ice water dissolving sugar? Not very good. So we have to use this different method. So maybe you dissolve some sugar in some ice water or some iced tea and it all disappears. just like a little bit of sugar is able to disappear. You could dissolve more. That's an unsaturated solution there. But then, you dissolve all of this sugar and then the sugar starts falling to the bottom and it can't dissolve anymore. That is going to be our saturated solution. So our recipes are calling for way more sugar. The tea does not taste that sweet yet. So how do we get it even more sugary sweet? Well, there's this special technique in like making really sweet lemonades or really sweet teas, is that you actually have to heat up the tea or lemonade or whatever and boil it even. And when it's really, really hot, you can dissolve almost as much sugar as you want to that solution. So you dissolve all this sugar. And the thing is, that sugar stays dissolved in that water. So you can actually cool that solution back down. That sugar will stay dissolved in there. And then you have a super saturated solution because more sugar than can normally be dissolved is now dissolved in that solution. Okay, just a quick 6 questions and we are done with this lesson. So try answering these and then I will go over my answers really quick. Okay, question 1. Define what a solution is. Homogeneous mixture of solutes and solvents. Name the parts of a solution, solute and solvent. In seawater, name what the solute and the solvent is. Now there's lots of things in seawater, but the 2 main ones are the solute is salt and the solvent is going to be water. In atmospheric gas, oxygen makes up about 20% of it, nitrogen makes up about 70%, the missing 10% is made up of other things. Which gas is the solute here and which one is the solvent? Oxygen is a solute because it makes up less of the gas. Nitrogen is the solvent because it makes up more, and that's that. 5, define the 3 types of solution: unsaturated, saturated, and supersaturated. Unsaturated is less than the maximum amount of solute can be dissolved in water. You could dissolve more. Saturated is when the maximum amount of solute can be dissolved in water. You can't dissolve anymore at a given temperature. And supersaturated is when you dissolve more solute in a water than you could normally at a given temperature. Normally you have to heat something up and cool it back down to get supersaturated. So naming an example of each of these types of solutions, we could use those examples from that sweet tea example. Unsaturated, just a little bit of sugar in water. Saturated is you have all this sugar that some of it falls to the bottom. You can't dissolve anymore. And then supersaturated is when you boil some water to get even more sugar dissolved in there. And then you cool it back down to a lower temperature so that more sugar is dissolved than you normally could have at that temperature.